Thank you all for joining us tonight at this Cambridge for Europe event. I'm Paul Brown, if you don't know me, and I'm the chair of Cambridge for Europe and also chairing tonight's discussion. Our discussion tonight is on why the UK, we believe that the UK should join Erasmus Plus and what we can do as individuals and as groups to actually achieve that goal. Just before I get on and introduce our panel tonight, just some rules about how this event will work. First of all, you'll see that your mic has been turned off, and if we'd also ask you to keep your video turned off just to preserve bandwidth during the course of this meeting. What we'll do is we'll have the presentations from the panelists first. That will take maybe 25 minutes, half an hour or so, and then follow that by a Q&A session. If you'd like to submit a question, you can do so using the chat button at the bottom of your page. When you do that, if you'd like to let us know in the question or observation, but certainly in the questions, which panelist you would like to direct your question to, and also if you'd like to be unmuted so you can actually ask your question rather than just have one of us read it out, that would be great as well. And I think that's about it. I think I'll introduce our panel now. Our first speaker will be Dr. Ian James, who's a reader in modern French literature and thought at the Faculty of Modern and Medieval Languages in Cambridge, University of Cambridge. Second speaker will be Dr. Cahir O'Kane, who's a reader in genetics at the University of Cambridge and also a Cambridge for Europe committee member. And he's also hosted a lot of Erasmus students over the years. Anna Grainger will be our next speaker, and she's a modern language teacher and a former eTwinning ambassador. And she'll be followed by Julius Lajtha, who's the president of the Young European Movement in the UK. Also, we'll be joined briefly by Tamsin Sasha, who is vice chair of Grassroots for Europe, and she'll be talking about some of the campaigning they're planning to do around this issue as well. And I think without further ado, I'll hand over to Ian now for our first presentation.
Thank you, Paul, and hello, everyone. So it won't come as a surprise to you, I'm sure, that those of us involved in the teaching of modern foreign languages in the university sector strongly believe in the value of language learning as such for both individuals and for society. Learning a foreign language gives you a range of firstly, academic skills. It develops cognitive skills, and there's plenty of evidence to back that up. But it also, of course, gives people cultural knowledge as well as understanding and access to people, places, and cultural forms that they might not otherwise have. In short, one can make a claim, and I think there is evidence to back this up, that learning languages makes you brainier, certainly more intellectually agile and more open to the world. But learning a foreign language also helps people develop their autonomy. It gives them the freedom to live and work abroad, enhances their communication and social skills, and also their general employability. On a more general level, language learning supports creativity, critical thinking, diversity, and makes an important contribution, one could argue, to the creation of educated citizens who are able to participate in a mature civil society, democracy, and a globalized world. So certainly I believe, and language teachers almost all believe, that language learning ought to form a part of a well-rounded education and formation for everyone. And for a modern foreign language university course, the year abroad, which is normally taken in the third year of a four-year degree, is an essential component to learning a language and a culture belonging to that language at a higher level. The third year abroad gives the opportunity for full immersion in the language and culture of the target country, and students achieve near native speaking and comprehension skills in that language. But they also gain a more complete knowledge of the contemporary culture they're studying and of those of other similar countries. So spending a year abroad in the third year of a modern languages degree is a valuable life experience, which is very important to career development, personal potential, and opportunity. And the Erasmus programme for a long time now has been an integral and essential support to the year abroad experience, both in the Cambridge Modern Languages faculty and across other modern languages programmes in the UKHE sector. Now, we do send students out across the globe to a range of countries, Latin American, Hispanophone and Lusophone countries, Francophone countries in the Caribbean and Africa, amongst others areas. But predominantly, we do still send students to continental Europe, and this plays a huge part in our year abroad program in the third year. And Erasmus Plus has been a tried and tested scheme, forming an essential part of our program. It's worth noting that it takes a very long time to establish a scheme like this. And Erasmus over the years, over decades, has evolved into something that runs very, very smoothly and with a minimum of bureaucracy. So it offers long-standing, well-funded, and perhaps most importantly, reciprocal arrangements that offer high quality and reliable experiences abroad, mostly in European countries, but also beyond Europe. In fact, the program takes in 190 countries within and beyond the EU. And it's of particular benefit for those students who might be learning a foreign language at degree level, who are unsure about the year abroad. It can often be an intimidating idea, the prospect of spending a year in a foreign country. And so the reliable programs that we offer, which are familiar, tried and tested, as of particular benefit to those kind of students. The Erasmus program offers our year abroad students known educational options that are guaranteed through reciprocal arrangements. As a program over the years, it's been widely and hugely popular, always rated highly by students, and has made a real positive difference to people's lives. There is evidence to suggest that it's in particular made a positive impact on individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. The University Council of Modern Languages noted that the European Commission's data on the UK's participation in Erasmus Plus in 2019 showed that 54,619 participants in 684 UK projects benefited from Erasmus Plus mobility in higher education, vocational education and training, school education, adult and youth learning. And this equaled a total UK grant of 144 plus million euros. So this, in many ways, is an irreplaceable scheme of great value to us. And I'll finish just by mentioning some of the clear limitations of the Turing scheme. The key limitation of the Turing scheme is that it's non-reciprocal. It does fund students going out abroad, but it does not offer any financial support for travel and living costs for incoming students who will come to us from previous Erasmus institutions and countries. So the opportunities being offered under the Turing scheme are nothing like the existing tried and tested European university arrangements. And in the absence of reciprocal arrangements, it's very much likely that many of the existing opportunities that we have will lapse, because European students will face costs, visa costs, travel and living support costs, which they didn't previously face, which they will be able to continue to access in other countries that have kept on the Erasmus Plus scheme. Basically, one of the key problems is that the Turing scheme as proposed appears to be quite significantly underfunded. It's worth noting that the Erasmus budget is due to rise significantly in the next 5 years. And certainly many of my colleagues have strong concerns about the size of the Turing budget. Turing excludes placements for staff, research staff and exchanges, and these we have benefited from hugely and have helped develop shared research cultures with our European partners. There are various visa issues unresolved with Turing, and in summary, Turing wipes out well-established, existing, reliable opportunities in favor of the slow development of future opportunities based on a scheme that is run seemingly in a much less optimal manner and on a much more limiting and limited model. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ian. That was great. A very good introduction to the Erasmus scheme here. Cahir, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so Ian mentioned that the Erasmus scheme was reciprocal. So I can tell you a little bit about my experiences on the receiving side. I haven't been involved in organising it, but I have seen students in the final year genetics undergraduate, and I've also hosted probably around 20 Erasmus Plus students in my lab at the genetics department over the last 20 years. So what does hosting in the lab mean? And if I just share with you what that means, is that they spend about a semester in a recipient lab. There's a learning agreement. You write a report, so it goes back to the home institution, as Ian said, it's structured. And in a semester, so about 3 or 4 months here, they don't, most of them don't manage to do enough to publish a full scientific paper, but some of them do. And here I've just given you a few examples where I've highlighted individuals who have been on Erasmus funded stays in my lab, typically for around 3 months. And I think most of them are in blue. One is in a slightly lighter color because she's from Turkey. As Ian said, it's not only EU, but other countries have bought into it as well. And actually the Turkish visitor, she came back a couple of years later for a PhD as well. So the benefits multiply. So science might seem like a dry and lab-based undertaking, but I think all of those names in those papers tell you something else, that is a very human undertaking and a very human process, and just trying to extract from that what the human benefits are. If I then why support EU to UK side of student exchanges, which are not eTwinning? So as you've seen from those papers, it benefits the UK research community directly. Also, UK students who are here, it broadens their perspectives from working with incoming students, even without them having to go to other countries as well. As I mentioned, in one case, some come back as highly skilled and highly trained post-graduation. Even when they don't, returnees to the home country help build UK soft power, because looking at where many of my visitors have got to over the last 20 years, many are now in quite senior positions in their home country. But perhaps less quantifiable than those concrete, but still important, is that that reflects that it builds long-lasting communities for, among others, UK students, UK graduates, and UK scientists. And those visitors who've been in my lab over the last 20 years or so, they have the people that they work with, they're still in contact with in my lab. With myself, if I get an email from them about something, then they know they get a response from me quite quickly, and vice versa. So it builds communities that are long-lasting. So that has gone. And if I had to sum up one word that's printable, I would say vandalism. So, sorry to finish on that. Hopefully there'll be something a bit more.
Thank you, Cahir. I think you're probably not the only one here thinking that.
Yeah.
I'll hand over next to Anna Grainger, who's modern languages teacher, and she's going to speak about the eTwinning project, which many of us might not be so familiar with.
Can you see my screen okay? Is that working?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. Hi, everybody. Just to introduce myself, I'm a modern language teacher. I've got over 20 years experience of teaching. I started off in secondary. I've taught adult education, and I now teach in a primary school in a deprived area of Coventry. And eTwinning has been very much a big part of my work for the last 5 years. Okay, so what is eTwinning? So it's a network, oh, sorry, wrong one. So it's actually a network of almost 1 million teachers across Europe and beyond to run projects within classrooms, linking with other classrooms in other countries. And it's for children aged 3 to 19 who really have been the forgotten age range in everything that's been going on just lately. It's fully inclusive, so projects can be run in nursery schools, they can be run in special schools, in pupil referral units, so completely inclusive within the classroom. And it also covers teacher continuing professional development, so that teachers can actually learn from each other across borders to improve practice within their own classrooms. It's wider than just the EU, so it covers now 44 countries across Europe and beyond. So there are countries now, including Georgia, Lebanon, Jordan, and others who are also involved in eTwinning. You can get recognition for your work, quality labels, prizes. It's great for schools, schools get recognition, and it's great motivation for the children as well that we work with. And the great thing is that it's fully compatible with the curriculum. So there aren't many rules as such. You can create your own projects. The key thing is that you show collaboration with other classrooms in other countries, but you're in control very much of the subject and the projects that you actually create and run. So you can see here the participating countries, and all of these countries will actually be participating in the new European education area, which is being established through Erasmus. And as you can see, the UK, being there in grey, is one of the only countries in Europe now who are going to be actually excluded from this. And I have to say, it was probably one of the saddest moments of my life on midnight of the 1st of January, when I sort of logged on, or tried to log on to the eTwinning site, and discovered that we were no longer able to log in with our details. And as I say, the UK turned grey. But we have the Turing scheme. So we've already heard a little bit about the Turing scheme. But the problem with Turing is it funds mobility. It's not fully inclusive in the fact that you can't take 3-year-olds on an exchange trip abroad, even though in theory you can actually apply for funding for mobility for children from about the age of 4. There isn't any reciprocity, which we've already heard, and I think the worry is that this is not going to really be much of an incentive for other countries to work with the UK. If they want projects in English, they've got the opportunity to work with Ireland through Erasmus, rather than actually needing us. There isn't any teacher professional development, so we can no longer access that. And classroom or projects are not classroom based, it purely is about mobility. So there hasn't really been a huge amount left for schools, particularly primary schools that can't benefit easily from that mobility. And in theory, the education budget's been cut by 1.9 billion. Turing is offering £100 million for the first year. It's only guaranteed for 1 year. Don't know what's going to happen after that. But given that the claim by ministers was that it would have cost £2 billion, in theory, the education budget has been cut massively. Schools are on their knees at the moment in terms of funding, and we're certainly not going to see that saving in schools to put into schools to make education better. So why is it important for schools, particularly schools like mine? Well, it helps break down barriers. So you're challenging stereotypes and things like that. Many children have got quite low aspirations. They don't really know what opportunities are out there. And many children, certainly in my school, have not even been out of their local area. So it really helped to give them those aspirations and see that there is a wider world out there that they can actually access when they're older. I think Ian has already said this, it gives them an understanding of other cultures. So it can really help to challenge xenophobic ideas, racism, fear of other cultures as well. As I said, many children, particularly in my school, have not been out of their local area, challenge stereotypes, and it also brings purpose to the curriculum. So I think sometimes the curriculum can be quite dry. Children can't always see how it links with their life, but actually being able to link with real people in other countries really makes a big difference there. And why is it important on a wider scale? There was a report that was done in 2019 by the British Academy, as you can see at the bottom here, and they estimated that the lack of language skills costs the UK economy about £48 billion a year. And they actually called for a new languages strategy, a new national languages strategy as part of that report. Again, I think it was Ian saying that you need to live in a country or work in a country to actually become fluent. You've got to immerse yourself in that culture. And half an hour a week, fluent in 3 months is just not going to happen. It's sort of, I know, certainly in the past, we've seen all these books coming out, sort of, you know, be fluent in a language in 3 months, but it really is not going to happen. We need to inspire children from a young age, because otherwise they're certainly not going to be applying for Turing when they're 18 plus. It's going to be too late for them by that point. And dare I say that those without aspiration, the curriculum is getting narrower. So the thing that seems to be most important in schools now is maths and English. That seems to be all that's important, and everything else is starting to get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And I just think that if we don't give those children those aspirations and they can't do something that they enjoy, then we're actually going to find that that in the future, they're going to be the people that are costing the economy money, because maybe they're out of work and things like that, really. So I really believe that we've got to, that eTwinning, Erasmus languages can really help that. And just to finish off, just a story, something that happened last week. Maximus is one of my year 6 students, and I was having a bit of a low day last week, and one of our TAs came to find me, and she said, we've just been talking to year 6 all about what they'd like to be able to do when they grow up, when they're older. And Maximus turned around and he said, I'd like to be able to speak Spanish fluently when I'm older. And I'd been at the point where I was really questioning what I did. I was questioning the fact that, you know, I was trying to sort of campaign for eTwinning, to get eTwinning back, and didn't feel like I was getting very far. And that is the reason why I've got to continue to shout about this and shout about what we've lost for the children at my school, like Maximus, who it is making a difference for. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Anna. I think that's a really good point, actually, and Cahir was making the same thing, that although the pound, shillings and pence, or the more modern decimal equivalent, I suppose we should be using, is that argument is definitely, you know, not great for Turing. It's actually the softer factors are actually as important, and possibly even more, like aspiration, like actually exposure and developing these cultural networks. I think is an aspect which really can't be ignored. And yeah, one of the aspects of Erasmus which is really tragic to lose. I think we'll move on next to Julius Lajtha from the Young European Movement. And I'm actually not really sure what he's going to talk about, but I'm sure he'll let us know right now.
Yes, thanks a lot for the invitation, and thanks a lot for joining us tonight. And it's also great to see a number of familiar faces, not least Anna Grainger, who I've already had the pleasure to be on a panel with previously. Yeah, I would like to talk about the Young European Movement and also our efforts to bring Erasmus back and to bring opportunities back. The Young European Movement is not only the youth organization of the European Movement UK, and they were also the youth branch of the European Movement Cambridge, if you like. We are also the UK section of a pan-European youth organization, which is called the Young European Federalists, or JEF Europe, which is actually the biggest political youth organization of the continent. And we have sections in many countries, amongst others the UK, most EU countries, but also some other non-EU countries, as we have to say, sadly, since the beginning of this year. And this doesn't mean that we are sort of out of the network. We are stronger in than ever, and whenever we interact with our partners and we talk about our campaigns and projects, we see how strong the links are between the other European countries and us as the UK section of that. I myself, my name is Julius, as you can see. My last name is Hungarian. This is why the pronunciation is always a bit difficult. Sorry, Paul. My parents are German, but I've been born and raised in Austria before moving to the UK to study at the University of Aberdeen. And yeah, funnily enough, I'm not only the president of the Young European Movement UK, but I'm actually also on my Erasmus right now. So I'm tuning in from France, from wonderful Lyon, and it's 9:30 here. And I'm doing exactly that experience that young people will not be able to have anymore, as really pretty much the final generation of UK-based students that have the opportunity to go abroad and have this experience. Unfortunately, my term is ending very soon, so I'll be heading back at the beginning of June. But I really enjoyed my time, and I can definitely confirm all the benefits when it comes to language learning and when it comes to the intercultural aspects as well. In terms of Erasmus and our stance on it, obviously I'm preaching to the convinced here. It will not be anything surprising for you to hear that we as Young European Movement, we are obviously very, very, very disappointed with the entirety and with the ensemble of political decisions taken with regards to Europe. This doesn't only concern Brexit, this concerns many other ways in which the UK government is trying to build a ditch and to dig that ditch deeper between the continent of Europe and us in the UK. And also specifically with young people, because we actually believe that the decision to leave Erasmus Plus is a dedicated attempt to tear away UK youth from continental youth. And this program, Erasmus Plus, obviously served as a perfect chance for young people to get to know other cultures, to feel connected to them, and to develop this European identity, this European sense of togetherness, which is exactly what we need to make Europe work and to make the European Union actually work. What the UK government is doing is actually going exactly the opposite way and trying to cut the links that exist. And in the case of the Erasmus program, and this is what we are particularly fussed about, this is cutting a link that would not have been necessary to be cut. There is a number of countries participating in Erasmus. I'm not sure if I'm going to mention them all now. Iceland, Norway, Turkey, Serbia, North Macedonia, and Liechtenstein. And up until a while ago, it was also Switzerland, who are all non-EU countries and who are still full program members of the Erasmus Plus program. And then there is obviously, as was already hinted upon, many countries all around the world which have no geographic, linguistic, or whatever link to Europe, which are still part of that program. And the decision to leave it, allegedly a financial one, and allegedly one that was based on the true reasoning of what the UK citizen wants, and true reason of the budget, is definitely not a positive one, and not a really arguable one, because if you make the comparison, and obviously, and within the steering group that Tamsin is going to talk about, we also looked into that. There is so many ways in which the Turing program is really nothing more than a placebo replacement to kind of reduce the media and political impact that leaving Erasmus had. And this is something that I think we here in the wider European movement, be this EM, be this the local branch in Cambridge or other branches, wherever you're tuning in from, this is what's so nice about Zoom, that we can connect so easily. We need to get the message out there that this decision is not in the favor of young people, and that this decision is a purely ideological one and not based on budget or funding, because in the end, the financial difference is very, very small. And as was also hinted upon, the economic benefit of that mobility is also something that ought not to be forgotten. In the UK, 3 million young people have been able to take advantage of Erasmus. It is basically anyone up to the age of 30, which is actually half of the active life of an individual. So it covers a huge part of the population. Going abroad also makes you 20% less likely to be unemployed. This is something that really many CVs lack, and that makes your CV stand out as a young person to go abroad. There is also the possibility to do traineeships with the Erasmus program, and 1/3 of those people who are doing an Erasmus plus funded traineeship, they are actually offered a job at that company upon finishing that traineeship. So in many ways, going beyond language learning, going beyond the classic Erasmus that I'm doing at the moment in France, there is so many benefits, which are cultural, social, and also professional, which the Erasmus program brings, and which also, and that I want to emphasize, speaking with my hat as the president of this organization, the reciprocity of the program brings about, which the Turing scheme cut, which we heard before. That is obviously something that is a huge loss. And on the 15th of January, you might all be aware, Boris Johnson promised that there was no threat to the Erasmus scheme. And despite openness by the European negotiators to partake in that program, obviously provided that the funding
Sorry, Julius, you're breaking up there. I don't know. Ah, have we lost Julius?
I think I'm back. I'm just going to switch off my camera, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I can hear you again now.
Just to avoid any further interruptions. I'm sorry about this. Last thing I was saying, with the announcement that there would be no threat to the Erasmus scheme, obviously young people were put forward with the outlook of being able to continue to participate. This is not the case anymore, and I want to underline once again also, and this is something that the European, sort of the continental European allies, if I may call them, can confirm. There is no resistance whatsoever. On the opposite, there was more than open arms and more than open doors for the UK's continued participation. The only thing is that obviously the UK would have to pay for it. And the UK is actually paying for the continued participation in other programs, such as, for example, Horizon Europe, and other ones where funding is necessary from the UK side, as agreed in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. But on the Erasmus front, this wasn't done, and we believe that this is just a huge loss. And I think Owen just put a message into the group chat. I think the links are not clickable, so you might want to copy and paste them into your browser, or you can perhaps put them in once again with the HTTPS in front, because then Zoom recognizes them as clickable. And we are working on this, and this is probably also the bridge to Tamsin. We're working on this in a wider coalition, which is currently being created. We are also going to have the advantage of a training of a professional lobbyist who is going to share with us his tips and tricks on how to actually make our voice heard as young people specifically, and with such a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG, as they call it in the campaign language. And our BHAG is really to get this program back in its full form, and with participation of all those who want to. And obviously this is a long road. But to anyone who is interested in this, and particularly those who are maybe in the age bracket of YEM, which is up to the age of 35, but also anyone else, the invitation is really there for everyone. If you want to work with us on getting this back, and on also making it clear to the wider public that this decision to leave Erasmus is something beyond Brexit. So it's not only thanks, Owen. So it's not only something about Brexit, yes or no, but it's something about opportunities being taken away, and something about the opposite of global Britain, actually, something about a rather narrow mentality of trying to scrap links and preventing intercultural exchange. If you want to work with us on that, then please do get in touch and design this campaign with us in this very early stage. Where we are very much looking forward to your input on what areas to cover, because the program is huge, as you might be able to tell already from this call, and on what kind of messaging to use. I think we have to reach the widest part possible of the population, and I think that this is a topic where we can reach many, many, many people, even those who are maybe not as militantly pro-European as EM Cambridge members or EM UK members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julius, and I hope there'll be plenty of volunteers from here in Cambridge and Cambridgeshire region. And I know we're being joined by people from across the UK here, so everyone please spread the word. I think really listening to what you said, I was actually reminded quite in a way of the debates over freedom of movement, where when there's been repeated polls of the UK population, especially younger people, when they're actually asked about it being, and it was made clear that it was a reciprocal arrangement, and it showed then there was clear support, and people really do value these opportunities, and certainly narrowing of the horizons you mentioned is real tragedy, especially when it isn't really even supported by public opinion. It's just a message that's gone out there, myth as it were, that's pervasive. Everyone thinks that everyone's against it when that's not the case. I think at this stage, I think we'll move on to Tamsin, who is from Grassroots for Europe, and will speak just swiftly about some of the work they're doing on Erasmus as well.
Thank you.
I think we are clicking about at the same time.
Oh, sorry. I spend most of my life on Zoom, so I should know by now how to do it. Thank you very much for having me. I'm not going to talk too long, so don't worry. I just want to introduce the steering group that I'm a member of. So as Julius said, Boris Johnson reneged on his commitment to retain Erasmus+, and that's why we set up this steering group in January. And the group is administered by myself, Caroline Kuipers, Jennifer Monaghan, and we have a whole team, and it's an ever-expanding team of volunteers, and it's really lovely to see Anna Grainger here tonight, who has just joined us recently, and also Julius from YEM, and we've got a few other members from YEM who have just joined us recently too. We've got also, I'll just go through some other names: Helen Wales, Andrew Hadley from SIL, Juliette Lodge, Niamh Donnellan, Julie Ward, and Christine Lester, who have just recently joined us. And we are working with SIL and YEM in particular. Scotland and Wales are represented. Both the devolved governments have announced plans to finance exchanges on the lines of programmes that they've lost. We're working closely together, and Wales for Europe are fully involved in the Erasmus+ campaign. And so what we're wanting to do really is highlight the inadequacy of Turing, and it's something that we didn't need to leave, as Julius has already mentioned. So one of the things that I'm doing with Andrew Grainger at SIL is we're hoping to make a video, and at the moment I'm amassing lots of different testimonials from alumni, Erasmus alumni, from all different ages and backgrounds. So we're hoping to make a video of that. We're building up quite a vast resource on Slack of lots of every single article about Erasmus and Turing, and comparing them and looking at it with a fine tooth comb. And we haven't yet got a website, but that's what we're working on. And obviously we are also putting articles out on Sussex Bylines and all the Bylines network, to working with Julie Ward, who's obviously published articles for the Bylines network, just really highlighting the difference between the two schemes. We're hoping in the long run is to rejoin. That's our main aim, is to restore Erasmus to the four nations, and to regain the benefits in the meantime of international learning exchanges that we've lost with the ending of Erasmus+. And we're really wanting to highlight the plus side. I know that's been talked about already, but it's not something that's been talked about by the government very much. So to argue, to go against the narrative that Erasmus is for, the privileged people who would have been studying anyway. And because it's not just about students, it's all about all the other things that Anna has so eloquently highlighted earlier on. So, we've only just formed. We're quite a young group. As I say, we're ever expanding. Susie is also here. Susie Courteau, she's a member of our group. And we have lots of plans. We're trying to, one of the things we're doing is hoping to get a PR person to work with us to really get our message out there. So in the protest week, we'll be getting some flyers produced and specifically about Erasmus. We might even be tying it into the fact that there's the government are cutting arts funding, humanities funding by 50%. So, I feel very passionately as a performer. This is what I do in my day job. I run a charity, a theatre company. My work has steadily got more political in the last few years. And I'm really ashamed that now we are not so technicolor, that we are now the grey colour, as Anna was saying, that, we're not this, vivid rainbow colour that we were in this country. And it seems to be happening not just in education, but in trade, in terms of musicians and visas. And Erasmus Plus is just one aspect of that. But it was something that we didn't have to leave, and we were promised that we'd stay in. So I'm fighting with the rest of the group to try and get us back in there. So that's what we're all about. And one of the other things that we're organizing is webinars. So we have a couple of webinars coming up. One on the 16th of June, and that's with Jackie Jones, former MEP in Wales, Andrew Adonis and Julie Ward. So put that one in your diaries. I'll put all of this in the chat later on. And also on the 14th of July, I'm going to be collaborating, or we're going to be collaborating with SIL and Actors of Dionysus, which is my theatre company. I work in education quite a lot. So I do feel passionately about young people having access to the kind of schemes of Erasmus. And I'm not an alumni of Erasmus, but I can really see the benefits of it. And I really want to try and, get away from this kind of narrow, middle, little England mentality, which I think not being part of Erasmus is that's the message that is coming across from all this. And I think we need to counter that narrative as much as possible, hence being on this steering committee. And another committee that I'm on, and I'll finish in a minute, is the Festival of Europe. And I mentioned the Festival of Europe because one of the things that we want to do is have an Erasmus village. And that is something that we're working toward. That will be in September of next year. And it will be the culmination of a wonderful summer of Europe. And I'm sure that we'll be talking a lot about Erasmus Plus throughout that summer leading up to September, if we can make this festival happen. But there'll be a lot more on that subject later on. I'll stop talking now, and if you've got any questions, do ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamsin. A lot to chew over there, I think. But yeah, if you could share those links, that would be brilliant. Yeah, somebody else saying they love the idea of the Erasmus Village. Yeah, I think that sounds a really nice idea, actually. I think it'd be interesting to see how that actually looks in the real life. Hopefully it will be in real life by then, if Boris Johnson doesn't screw things up too much in the meantime. I think if you've got any questions, could you please add them in chat? I think while we're waiting for that, I've just actually got a question for Ian. You mentioned that the Turing scheme isn't reciprocal. Does that mean that if students travel to other countries, they're likely to face having to pay fees? Because I know certainly for the US, that would be an awful lot of money in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's not absolutely clear yet, but certainly fees aren't paid by the Turing scheme, as far as I know. And so the question, it would be how it develops. I mean, certainly with our students, we could say, well, we'll waive fees, and existing partners could agree also to waive fees, but it would happen on a case-by-case basis. But even if that were to happen, of course, incoming students would, as I mentioned in my talk, face all those extra costs: visa costs, travel costs, living costs. So there's not much of a disincentive. There's not much of an incentive anymore for our existing exchange partners to send their students to us. So as far as I know, the issues of fees would be based on whether individual institutions decide under the new arrangement to continue fee waivers. but certainly, as you suggest, in the US, the disparity in fee levels is so great. There's not much incentive there, I don't think.
Okay.
Well, shall I pick up what I think was the first question that
Sure.
came in? So we had something from Doris Brenke. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, Doris. And I think this was quite a technical point, so I don't know who's best to pick it up, but it was straightforwardly a question around whether students will now qualify for visas. I think that's thinking about UK students going to the rest of Europe, whether there'll be a visa obstacle there.
Well, I think that will depend on each individual country's visa policies towards nationals of third countries, because immigration from third countries is not an EU competence. It's a competence of national governments. So it'll depend on the national government. Students coming here to the UK, it is still possible to get visas. There are both student visas for students who are registered at fee-paying institutions, for shorter-term visitors, which would cover, for example, the Erasmus students coming from Turkey usually get what was called, I'm not sure what the name is now, but it's been called a UK visiting student or student visitor visa.
Thanks, Cahir. I see in the chat Doris has helpfully clarified that I misinterpreted her question, and she was primarily actually thinking about students coming into the UK. Yeah,
but of course, to get that visa, you have to fill in a form that's about 10 pages long. You have to show evidence of being able to support yourself financially. You have to bring bank statements. You have to God, who knows what else. Because I've given feedback on informal fee. I'm not allowed to be an immigration advisor, so I can't give advice. But I know when students find that students in Turkey have that student visitor visa form, it is quite a daunting form to fill in.
Thanks, Cahir.
Great, thank you, Cahir. Actually, I've got an announcement that Julius asked me to make, is that after this meeting, straight afterwards, the main event today, he's going to stick around to talk about the Young European Movement. If anybody else wants to ask him any questions about that, or you know, what they're doing and how to get involved, so that'll just be straight after this meeting on this same call. So just stick around. We had a question actually from Peter Burke. It's probably best for either Julius or Tamsin, which is, in our quest to restore Erasmus, do we have any allies in government or at least in Parliament?
Should I go first, Tamsin, and you? Yeah. So as I said before, there is definitely a huge amount of support from all over Europe in terms of giving young people opportunities back. So there would never be any sort of problem for the UK to come back into Erasmus Plus. The only problem is that there is too rigid sort of set of criteria that have to be met. And that is that what the UK government tried to do, which is to join Erasmus only for a period of, I think, 2 years, 2021, 2022, was not possible because you have to join the entire funding cycle. And the assumption is that obviously the UK government wanted to keep those 2 years as a preparation time to come up with their own scheme, and to along that preparation time span to kind of serve on the wave of the well-functioning and very well set up Erasmus program. So this kind of cherry picking, which obviously continental Europe is already sick of from past decades, I would say, obviously was something that created some resistance. And then the other point is obviously the financial obligations. So these are obviously things that would have to be met, and being part of the scheme does cost money, and it costs money for any member state and also any non-member state. But there is no problem and no resistance whatsoever that I would be aware of in terms of the EU level, except for the
I'm afraid you're breaking up again, Julius. Hi, Julius, are you? No.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the camera switched off again. I'm sorry. So in terms of, yeah, EU level, they have those two criteria, and that's it. And then when it comes to national parliaments, I don't have the exact overview of all member states, but I can sort of have a ponder with regards to the Austrian parliament, the German one, the French one, and in any event that I attended, any kind of report that I saw, there was always just deep regret about the loss, because the UK was a very, very popular destination for people to go to. Coming to the UK as Erasmus students was very popular. I think Spain is the most popular country, but obviously the academic rigor in the UK and the reputation that universities have was very good. So I couldn't imagine that there would be any rivalry to that. Yeah, the only thing is that obviously conditions have to be met, which was impossible. And before I maybe hand over to Tamsin, if she wants to expand on my response, I also want to underline her message, because she sent a very important survey into the chat, which is that we're looking for Erasmus alumni to share their experience. So if you know someone or you've been on an Erasmus before, then please do fill that form or share the link, and let's get many voices together, because if we want to showcase what Erasmus is about, then we really have to show how broad and how big this whole group of people is that are sad about the loss of it. That's just a little add here.
Great, thanks, Julius. Actually, Peter's clarified that he was actually thinking of the UK Parliament rather in terms of support. I don't know if Tamsin, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Julius, for mentioning the survey, and thank you those people in the chat who I'm in conversation with. Yes, in answer to your question, yes, we do have some support. Obviously, Andrew Adonis from the European movement and the European movement itself, who are doing a lot to further the cause of Erasmus+. We're working with them. I had a meeting last week with both Hugo Mann and Sarah Bird there. And also we have Lloyd Russell Moyle, who will be speaking at one of our webinars, I think on the 14th of July. I know that Caroline Lucas is very sympathetic to Erasmus. Richard Corbett, obviously, as you know, and there'll be plenty of other webinars that we have. We have a lot of support in Parliament, just not with government, obviously, unfortunately, which is why we're where we're at. Yes, so that will be growing, and we'll be doing some more investigative journalism into that and getting more people on board.
Anna Grainger, just okay,
Yeah,
if you'd like to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I've been in discussion quite a lot with two of our MPs in Coventry, Zara Sultana and Taiwo Owatemi, I think her surname is, and they're both very supportive. They're Labour MPs, and actually Zara did email Gavin Williamson back in January, I think, after our first meeting, and we've had a response back from him, and I've just debunked all the lies in there and sent it back. So yeah, so we've certainly got support from them, and also I've sort of got a group of eTwinners sort of got together really in January, and we've formed a WhatsApp group, and I know at least one of them's here today, Sarah, Bruce, and we've all been sort of writing to our MPs as well, and it's been quite mixed actually. I think sort of a lot of MPs have just sort of said, you know, it was too expensive, but one thing that we have found is that generally MPs don't seem to know what eTwinning is, and sort of a lot of the things are the plus side of Erasmus, the Erasmus Plus. So, you know, I think we've got to sort of really get the word out with them as well, and sort of, you know, keep writing letters and what have you, in order to really make them understand that Erasmus was not just about mobility. There was so much more to it than that.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Just like to pick up on what you were saying there. You mentioned MPs we've been talking about and writing to MPs, and I think that's something that's very important to do. Actually, if you're not sure where your MP stands, to write to them, and that includes MPs in our area. I suspect Daniel Zeitner. I haven't spoken to him about it yet, but I suspect he's supportive of Erasmus. But it's good to let them know that there is even if you think they're already on side, there are a lot of people who will support them in this decision. So please do write your MP. And I'm actually just adding to the chat, there's an action day this Friday. So it's a good opportunity if you just drop your MP a quick email, and you even maybe organize a meeting, possibly a bit late for that now, but just to get in touch and just talk to them about this issue, or indeed any other issues. But yeah, let them know, find out and see because some of them may be amenable to being won over. You never know. It's always worth a try. Okay, I think there was a question earlier.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions. There was one from actually just to finish off the last conversation. Kate Freeman's come in with an interesting comment about whether there's any prospect for an all-party parliamentary group on Erasmus, which seems like an interesting thought. But the question I was going to pick up was from Sarah Bruce, again a relatively technical one. But Sarah's asking whether language students who went abroad to become language assistants were covered by Erasmus, or whether that was something that was funded separately.
That tradition is being covered by the British Council. They have a language assistance programme which has been separate from Erasmus. I don't know if that's changed recently in years since I've not been involved, but I'm pretty sure it won't have. So in the long term, assistance have always been part of a British Council scheme.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you. I think there was a second question from Peter as well, Peter Burke. Although this may have been a slightly rhetorical question, I'm not sure, but Peter was saying, is Turing's main purpose essentially as a spoiler for the prospect of rejoining Erasmus? So I don't know if there was any comment on that.
Can I just add in quickly to begin with then? I think I agree with everything Julius said about the fact that this was an ideologically driven decision, and what Cahir said about it being vandalism. I think there's a sort of a vindictive quality to it that is part of the wider kind of culture war our government is pursuing. The Turing scheme is designed in such a way that I think it will fail. So whatever the intention is, relative to the success of Erasmus, I don't think it will be successful in the long run. And if various campaigners can show that to be the case as it evolves, then whatever the intention of Turing to be a spoiler, it has every chance of not working.
I can maybe add in something to that, maybe a rhetoric question. I think that's exactly what we should work towards. I think as the Turing scheme develops and hopefully, or maybe not, but also yes, improves and sort of as it gets rid of certain difficulties and certain sort of areas in which it doesn't really function well, it's going to become harder and harder to convince the public that this is not the scheme that we could have, that it's still poorer than the one that we had. So I think making clear that in the end it is only a decision of sanity to rejoin Erasmus as one of the campaign aims is certainly something that we should seriously consider, I think.
Can I just come back on that, because what I think the government will do, and I think we have to get there first, which is why we want to do this video, because what I think the government will do is probably make a video about how brilliant Turing is, with lots of diverse voices and saying, oh look how brilliant this scheme is. It's going to be it's so much more diverse and much more for people who wouldn't have had access to it, and sort of telling a kind of lie about what Erasmus is all about. So I kind of think we need to make that video in a sense. We need to get out the good things first before they do, because that's how they work, isn't it? That's how they've been working all along. So I think we need to be cleverer than them and preempt that, because that narrative will come out. That's the way they work.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling about touring is, regardless of whether it works or not, I think that I don't think the government cares whether it works or not. I think they just have to be seen to be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just come in as well?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Sorry, when I met with Taiwo back in January, she said that there's discussions that she'd been having with, I can't remember who it was now, but anyway, she said that there was talk about whether they could still run Erasmus alongside Turing. Now, obviously, 5 months down the line, I don't know whether that's changed or not, but certainly on the 1st of January, there was still talk about trying to keep some of Erasmus. So I think that's sort of another reason why we sort of need to be targeting MPs. As I say, that's all I really know, but that's what she told me back in January.
Thanks, Anna. And I think it's also been clarified in the chat that Taiwo is indeed, that there is an all-party parliamentary group, and that Taiwo is the chair of that group, which is helpful. I mean, just to follow up there, Kate Freeman was asking, and I think in line with the comments you were just making, Anna, whether there is any prospect of reforming Turing into something that looks more palatable.
I don't know. I mean, I just don't know, to be honest. I mean, in my mind, you know, if we're not working within a scheme that other countries are working within as well, it can never be as good as Erasmus.
And it's an unknown scheme, isn't it?
Yeah.
As somebody said, I think Ian said, it's something that's tried and tested, and it's also being improved, isn't it? You know, the EU are improving it now. They're adding, maybe that hasn't been mentioned enough, and I don't know what all those extra things are. Maybe they're making it less bureaucratic. Perhaps there is an element of red tape involved in Erasmus. I don't know about your experience, Anna, of eTwinning, but when I spoke to the headmaster at my primary school, he wasn't very, let's say, enthusiastic about eTwinning because he found it very difficult in terms of paperwork. So maybe I don't know. That's all I'm saying from the conversation I had. But maybe they're improving it as well. And I think if you're starting from scratch, surely it's going to be a lot harder to make things work, because they're going to have to. There's going to be a lot of things that fail, and Erasmus is tried and tested.
One thing I was told a couple of years ago at a conference I went to was that they are creating this European education area. So they're planning on, really, really sort of making this scheme so much better, the whole Erasmus scheme so much better, that it's just going to improve education across the whole of Europe, and sort of the teacher training, the teacher professional development and everything. And I just feel that that's something that we are so going to miss out on. I mean, most of my professional development was done through eTwinning, particularly on sort of digital technology and things like that. And working now in a primary school where I'm the only language teacher, the only real CPD that I get within school, because there's no money for CPD, is teaching maths and English, which is of very little use to me because I don't teach maths or English. But obviously, languages does help to improve English, but it's just not. I don't get much CPD these days because of that, really.
Yeah, and who would have even known that CPD was part of Erasmus? I mean, it's a word that is so big in the creative industries and in my kind of profession, working in the arts. There is a creative, there is a CPD grant that you can apply for to the Arts Council, which I've applied to, and along with thousands of others. But I had no idea it was part of Erasmus.
And also, Turing is only guaranteed for the first year, and after that, who knows, it may disappear. There's no guarantees that it will last beyond this year.
Yeah, I think one of the things that strikes me is it's the old saying that, you know, well, I wouldn't start from here. Isn't that, you know, I think maybe, yeah, that's one of the aspects. If you're moving from something tried and trusted, you should have maybe expanded on that rather than trying to start again from the beginning.
The other
actually, there's a question here from later to that, actually, from Kate Freeman, who said, and we had a couple of other people with similar questions, is there an opportunity to reform or review the Turing scheme as a first step? If any, I don't know if any of you would like to address that, or
I can make a start, but I would want everyone to contribute, because as I said, our campaign is something that we are developing, and we obviously need to also differentiate between a campaigning message and a political aim that we want to achieve. But I definitely think that moving along the lines of criticizing the Turing scheme with a clear link to what the Turing scheme, that I can pronounce it, what the Turing scheme could deliver if it wasn't the Turing scheme but Erasmus, is, I think, important. So rather than playing maybe a feedback focus group for the UK government on how to improve the little bits that the Turing scheme offers, which Erasmus offered as well, in which the Turing scheme sometimes offers to the same degree, in many areas obviously much worse, and in one particular area, which is, for example, the money that you receive going abroad, it actually does better. It's actually more attractive financially. I think that would be too little. I think we have to emphasize the richness of the Erasmus Plus program. And there was a wonderful message just put into the chat, if you want to read this, a very long one from Stephen Holm. If we emphasize the richness of the Erasmus Plus program, then there is no point in arguing that the Turing scheme could be expanded to ever meet those needs that the Erasmus Plus program did. And I think inevitably, this is what I mentioned before, it should be the only sane decision for the sake of young people's opportunities in various areas, not just education, that we would rejoin Erasmus fully.
Thanks, Julius. Yeah, I think I just added a comment there, actually, that, yeah, just like what you said, I think when we're arguing the case for a return to Erasmus, we need to talk about the benefits of Erasmus even more so than the deficits of Turing. I think that's definitely a positive argument, and that's too much been missing from, I think, our campaigning in general. But I think it's maybe time to turn over a new leaf in that.
One thing, sorry, which I don't think has been mentioned, is that actually there are reports that say that after we've paid the cost of Erasmus, there is still a huge amount of money that's brought into the country by people that actually do come to the UK through Erasmus. And obviously that's another thing that we're going to lose out on now, is all of that income that has come in the past. And it's not just about us paying to be part of it, but actually we get more back than we did get more back, should I say, than we actually paid into it.
I think that actually speaks to a wider perception that you saw with the debate over student visas as well. I think from outside of the EU and a bit earlier, was that their students being seen and young people being seen as a burden, when in fact they're actually an asset, both culturally and financially, to the country. And there's, I think certainly in Theresa May's time that was an issue, but I think maybe we're seeing another aspect of that, of the same argument and same perception here. Actually, Michael, is there any more questions here?
I don't think there are any completely fresh questions, Paul. Killian had asked whether it was likely that the absence of reciprocity would mean that less students would be coming from other countries into the UK, but I think lots of people in the chat have answered that with a definitive yes, it is going to reduce the numbers coming into the UK. I don't know if you know the answer to this, Paul, actually. Andrew Jones has just asked whether the Cambridge University European Society Zoom call on Erasmus Plus that happened last month, whether that's available as a recording anywhere.
Actually, I don't know. I did look for it a few days later, but I didn't see it. I'd have to check. I'll make a note to check about that.
But other than that, I think that's taken us to the end of specific questions.
Yeah, I think we were going to, well, after I've thanked everyone, I think actually what we'll do now, if you can actually take the risk of everyone turning on your cameras, if as many as you like, and we'll take a screenshot of everyone here just for posterity's sake. If I can get that to brilliant. Okay, and everyone smile for the camera. Susie's in darkness there, I think so.
I'm in dark.
Okay. Okay, done. I'll have to do. Thank you very much. I'll just go back to exit full screen. I think I'd like to, before we move on to the discussion about the Young European Movement, which Julius will be leading, I'd like to thank our panelists tonight for a really intriguing discussion. I think we can probably all discuss this a lot longer, and hopefully soon we'll be able to do so in bars somewhere. But I think we're still feeling a little bit nervous about that, so we'll be online for a little while for events. But I'd like to thank Ian, Cahir, Anna, Julius, and also Tamsin, who joined us at fairly short notice this evening. And I'd like to thank you all, you in the audience, for your questions and for your input in the chat as well. It's always good to see a lively and very polite and enthusiastic chat box in an event like this. So thank you all for coming here tonight.